So I've been seeing a lot of interest on YouTube with like paint restoration and like budget paint jobs and stuff like that. So I've decided to use my Civic as a little project. I'm going to go through and basically fix every little dent and imperfection, you know, cheaply. So I'm just going to be focusing on this panel today. I just literally went to O'Reilly's and grabbed a quart of Bondo body fillers, like the cheapest stuff you can use. I see they changed the logo. Forever it was like that red Mustang. They finally changed it. It was that Mustang for like fucking 10 years or more. So I got that body filler. I got me a sanding block, 3 different grits of sandpaper. Let's see here, I have got 80 grit, 180, and 320. And last but not least, to finish it off, you know, so it won't rust up on me and shit, is I got some high build primer. And I just thought the high build would be better because it goes on thicker. It's more of like a primer surfacer. This alone could actually fill in scratches and minor dings and stuff like that. But yeah, as opposed to like the sealers and stuff like that, they're a lot thinner and they don't really fill as good as a high build primer does. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to focus on is the top of the fender. You can really see it here, this reflection, how it's got a lot of imperfections and this ding right here. Let me try and really show you what I'm be working with. Yeah, you can really see all those, it's just wavy. So I'm just going to work on this section for now. And what I like to do, let's see, I'm going to start off with the 80 grit. Definitely you want to lay your body filler on top of at least 80 grit, if not coarser. But this is what I like to do from the get-go. So I'm like unpackaging it as I talk here. But I'll get the 80 grit and I'll mark where my dents are to kind of get a guideline of where I'm going to be working. So I need to look at it really close. So it stops here. All this is good on this side of it. The waviness stops here. Let's see, this whole section is pretty wavy. There's a little ding here. I'm just kind of marking where I'm going to be working. So for starters, I'm going to work on this top section here and then come down and work on this little panel here that's a little wavy. So yeah, I'm just kind of hatching out where I'm going to be focusing. So this whole section here, wavy, ding here. So where there's going to be a lot of body filler, I'm going to knock it all down with 80 grit. Okay, so I'm going to show you a cool trick from the get-go on how to really pinpoint the areas that like the low and the high spots. So with just 80 grit sandpaper, I'm going to be focusing on where the filler is going to be, and I'm just going to sand it all the way down, and eventually the low and high spots will kind of like reveal themselves. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So yeah, this is actually working out exactly how I was trying to explain. So what's happening here is when I block it down, the low spots are still shiny and the high spots are getting sanded with no problem. But all these shiny spots, they're not getting touched by the sandpaper. So that's just another way to really pinpoint your imperfections and waviness in the panel. And like this spot here, it's getting down to the primer below the paint, so that's going to be a little bit of a high spot, but it's not enough to be an issue. I'm just about done blocking it. There's some chips here. Okay, so you need to kind of remember these shiny spots. It's all shiny right here. Also, I can feel it. But now I'm going to block out the shiny spots. Gotta really make sure you knock off all that clear. So now that I got the area that the body filler is going to be in knocked down on 80 grit, I'm going to go in with 180 and do the edges and kind of feather it in with 180. Just because you always get filler in a bigger area than you mean to, that's just the way it happens. So this paper's still good. Stuff gets expensive fast. I'm gonna save it. Okay, I got the 180 on my block, so now I'm just gonna kind of go over the outside of the area I'm gonna be working on with 180. I just kind of blend in those 80 grit sand marks I made, but still I want to keep the 80 grit sand scratches left alone where the body filler is gonna be. I'm gonna get ready to mix up the body filler and lay it down. So I'm about to start mixing my body filler, and it's kind of tricky on the ratio of the hardener and filler to use, but what I was taught once is to make a nice little patty and then go half the diameter with hardener as a starting point. And like depending on how hot or cold, this and that, you know, you can kind of adjust them there more or less. But it's a pretty hot day. I'm probably gonna do like a quarter of the diameter, just a little 1-inch streak of hardener, and then mix it up. And of course I kneaded the hardener before you do that, and how you do that is you squeeze the air out of the tube until you just see the hardener start to come out the top. You put the cap on, and then you just kind of massage it, because sometimes when they're on the shelf for a long time they get liquidy and they kind of start to separate. So I just, you know, did this for a second, really made sure the hardener was nice and consistent. So here's my little patty, and just like a quarter of the diameter, just like that should probably be good. Man, it might actually be too much. Man, it kind of sucks when you use too much, because then you use up the hardener before the filler's done. Wow guys, so I don't know what happened, but my spreader did not get put in the bag when I bought it from the store. I do not have a spreader, and the hardener's already in there. So what I'm going to use is this used up gift card. I can't believe I don't have a damn spreader. It was a cheap spreader anyway. O'Reilly's does not have good stuff, but so I'm going to use this gift card to mix and apply the body filler. When you mix it up, it's good to do like a folding and spreading. Don't stir it. Just like when you mix it, just make sure you put in pressure. I like to do it like this. It's been years since I have messed with body filler. But the reason you don't want to stir it, you don't want air to get in there, like bubbles, and this stuff really airs up pretty easily if you stir it. So you just want to kind of act like you're actually applying the Bondo to the panel. Just grab it, scoop it, spread it. It's kind of like you're folding it rather than stirring. So it's starting to get consistent. Just looking for like a solid pink color. And this Bondo stuff is really crappy. It's like the cheaper the stuff, the thicker it is. Like the 3M, the better quality fillers, they're softer, they're easier to sand, and they're easier to apply. They're just all around better. But man, this stuff was like $12 for a quart, and it's what anybody has access to. And whenever you spread it, you don't want to like press really hard. You want it to kind of like flow over the low spots. So I know the edge is good. I'm going to press on the edge. I know the bottom edge is good, so I'm going to press on the bottom edge. Just kind of imagine you're trying to get the filler to glide over the low spots. So like, what I'm doing is, I know this edge is perfectly straight, so I'm pressing hard on the edge, and I'm just letting it build up in the center. Oops. Screw that up. Letting it get high in the center. Same thing on the bottom edge. I'm putting pressure along the bottom and letting the filler build up in the center. This will probably be the last time I'll be able to do this, because it's starting to set up. So it's not perfect, but sometimes it's better just to leave it alone, because when it starts to set up, you're just going to screw it up. It's not as smooth as it can be, You know what? Yeah, I need to leave it alone. It's starting to set up. Need to take my own advice. That'll probably set up in like 10-15 minutes. And it's a good idea just to really let it set up and dry before you start sanding, because if you sand it too soon, it'll just gunk up the sandpaper and basically just ruin it on a single swipe. The sandpaper will be trashed because it'll just be like gummed up. So I'm gonna let it really dry and set up, and then hit it with the 80 grit. You know, it's not likely that you get it perfect your first pass of filler. I might have to knock it down with 80, check for low spots, and then do another thin coat of filler. But we'll see how this plays out. What I'm gonna start doing now is I'm just gonna grab a piece of 80 grit and just kind of, I think they call it roughing it in, and basically just knock it down. I'm not trying to shape it or get it straight at this point. I'm just trying to knock it down to a flat surface. Because honestly, I don't think I'm gonna get it right with the first coat of filler, but once I get it down and even, then I'll follow up with a block and make sure it's nice and flat. So basically, I know that this area here didn't need any filler, so that's why I'm kind of knocking that down. The area that was the issue is this little strip here. Alright, it's knocked down pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and start blocking it, just in case I can get it right the first time around. Now when you're blocking, it's important to like apply even pressure. Just, you want to like make sure the block has even pressure all around, because you're kind of counting on the block to do the leveling, or you are counting on it. This is what's getting you the straightness and the flatness. You know, if it's perfect here, you want to make sure it's flat there, so that if this is imperfect, it's taking care of that for you. Just keep it flat, let it do the work for you. Don't push too hard. Just kind of imagine you're letting it contour to the shape of the fender. It's actually looking pretty good. This might be okay with just one coat of filler. I'm sanding it down and I'm waiting for the high spots to reveal themselves, because I'm just wanting the filler to fill in the problem areas. And once I block it down enough, I'll start to see areas actually come through that didn't have dents. So I need to knock it down enough to see the areas that are okay kind of come through the filler. And then the point is just to have the filler stay in the dents, obviously. Dang, that feels really good. I'm just gonna go down a little bit more. I still would rather see the high spots come through. There we go. So this section here is starting to show the high spots that I keep telling you about, but never happened. So what's happening here is, so I had filler on this whole little strip here, and as I'm sanding, this is starting to come through the filler, this is coming through, and as I keep going, this is going to keep going higher. And basically this was the worst of the damage, this was the worst of the damage, and I believe there's a little bit here, but as I go, these high spots are coming through, and that tells me that the filler is at the right level that I need it to be, like the right thickness, not too high, not too low. And honestly, just by the feel, this is probably good enough. I'm just gonna go a little bit more, and then after that, it's time to knock it down with 180 and primer. The majority of the damage was here, here, and the rest of it just kind of blend the areas. I guess it was a little bit low and I didn't realize it. To the touch, it feels perfect. So now, you can't primer on top of 80 grit, so I need to get some 180 and go over the entire area. You need to really be sure you get the 80 grit scratches out, because primer will shrink into that and that will show through the paint job. I'm going to use 180 and go through it really good, and then 320 and primer. Alright, I've got my 180 set up. So 180 is actually coarse enough to level the filler, but mainly what we're trying to do is just get the 80 grit scratches out. That's really the only thing I'm focused on right now. But if I did miss any areas, the 180 would help to level out that as well. So in the front here, there's some really deep 80 grit scratches. So I really need to focus on that. Make sure I get all of that out. I don't want that showing up through the paint job. Primer surfacer anyway is pretty good about filling 180, but 320 it will for sure cover up with no problem. So I'm done blocking it down with 180. Now I'm just gonna go over the edges, like the perimeter of the area that I worked in, and just make sure all that's knocked down. No 80 grit scratches anywhere. They go pretty deep. Alright, so I just got done shooting some primer over the little area I just worked on, just to kind of like lock that spot in, so that I can stop now if I want to, and I can do this little area that I was talking about here. There's some things here. Basically, I like to like work in small sections at a time, fix this spot, sand it, scuff it, you know, fill it, prime it, do everything I got to do in one section. I don't like to get ahead of myself and have like filler that I haven't had time to work on. So this is done, ready to go. Before I move on to this next dent, I'm going to show you a cool trick to show to make sure you fill the dents right and it's going to look good when it's actually painted. So once this primer dries all the way, I'm going to get it wet, and when you get it wet, it looks kind of glossy for a second when it's wet, and you can kind of get a good idea when it's wet and shiny. It's got to be pretty bright outside. You can really see any dents or imperfections. So I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to get it wet and try to get a good angle to see if I see any like waviness. But when I laid the primer on there really thick and wet, I didn't see any waviness. It looks really good. And if it is a little wavy, this is a high build primer, so this would actually take care of some of that if I block it down. Okay guys, unfortunately it started raining pretty hard, but at least it'll get the fender wet, and maybe I'll be able to show you what I was talking about. So like when it gets wet, you can see the imperfections easier, but it's glossy. And man, yeah, it's kind of hard to pick up, but I'm just trying to point out that it is smooth. The dents do appear to be gone. It feels good to the touch. It looks good. So yeah, unfortunately this video is gonna be a wrap. I'm not gonna be able to work on this section here because there is a dent. But you know what, for my next video I thought it'd be cool if I get some of that Duplicolor perfect match and see actually how good that crap matches, and just paint this little section here just to experiment, just to see if that crap actually works. But if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna neutral slam it.
The fuck? You still haven't fixed that?
Oh, bullshit to that too, huh? Episode 2 of the fuck, what's the title? Hold on.